Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Thompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Thompson, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how'd you love the new intro?
Dude, that Handsome Jack. I've been jamming all day
Yeah.
for that Handsome Jack thing. So shout out to them for customizing us a theme song to go with that voiceover. I love it, man. I'm pumped now.
Yeah, man. It's great. I'm really excited how it turned out. You did some nice work yourself today. Appreciate all the work you did splicing that together. Came out really well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Really excited for the show tonight. Make sure you're checking out our sponsors over at Uncle Jumbo's, the Underdog Fantasy app, all the good stuff going on here. But you are joining us for Colts Week. It is time for the Bills and the Colts. It's an interesting time. We're now over the halfway mark in the season. We're into a stretch where now, you know, the Bills have gone through kind of their easier stretch here. You know, obviously thought they were going to get 3 wins with the Jags, Jets, and Dolphins. Ended up stumbling once there. And now we're getting into a little bit tougher one and being able to be in a spot where I'm a little excited to be able to go and you'll be able to flip things around, just like we flipped around our pictures.
I was going to say, I know that was bugging you. I didn't want to say anything.
I needed everybody to point it out. But being able to talk through here, obviously we can't talk Colts without bringing on our man Zach Hicks. Zach, how we doing, man? How are things in the wonderful world of the Indianapolis Colts?
Hey, they're doing pretty good. You know, not exactly with the season what a lot of people expected, but you know, for what I was kind of expecting going into the year, you know, the Colts went pretty young at a lot of positions. They got the new quarterback and Carson Wentz, who, you know, is kind of a step down from Philip Rivers. I know that might be a hot take to some Colts fans before the year, but considering all the changes and them going younger, getting a new quarterback, sitting at 5-5 right now is not too bad, and I think they're right in the thick of, you know, this very, very like long playoff race. You know, a lot of teams in this playoff race right now for the AFC. The Colts are right there in the thick of it, even with the tough schedule coming up.
Yeah, so talk to us, though, about that, you know, as somebody that's covering this team and as a fan of the team going into this season, the way they started with these new pieces and now seeing it sort of turn around here. How has that vibe been within the fan base and within the, you know, content creators? How has, you know, Colts Twitter been handling this kind of roller coaster of a half season so far?
You know how Twitter is. You know, one week you want everybody fired, the next week you're calling everyone a genius, and Carson Wentz MVP. The next week we should ship him out. You know, this is a horrible.
Our
trade.
Fan base is super level-headed and chill.
Yeah.
We don't see that.
Oh yeah, no, I always.
Nobody's ever tried to get Brian Daboll fired after a game. Trust me.
It's like that with every fan base. I've done this long enough to where I know that this is how it goes. But you know, I think that the level-headed fans and the people who realize, you know, this year wasn't the year to be like, oh, this is the Colts going all in, Super Bowl, Indianapolis Colts. I feel like anyone who kind of looked at this roster before the year knew that probably wasn't going to happen this year, but you were going to get some competitive football, and you were going to have to see if Carson Wentz was broken or not. That was really the biggest thing. And I think, you know, even for me, someone who was kind of pessimistic about the Carson Wentz trade and a little bit lower maybe than some of the fans, I'm pretty happy with what he's shown so far and kind of what the overall team has shown by going super young. You know, again, they're 5-5. They've seen a lot of progress from a lot of young players: Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., Rock Ya-Sin at corner, Kwity Paye the last couple weeks. So I don't know. For me, it's positive, but I guess I view more of the long term than kind of the, you know, short term saying like, oh, they need to win it all this year. It's like I feel like I can take a step back and be like, you know, this probably wasn't the year, but I do think they can be competitive this season as well, and they've shown that.
So before we jump into the breakdowns of offense versus defense, I want to get a little bit of insight. I wasn't quite prepared for this many names to be on the injury report when we took a look.
Colts. That's just the Colts every week, every year. That, like, honestly,
Just super conservative.
Dude, I am I'm like numb to the injury reports now. Like they don't faze me. I don't feel it anymore. This is just a normal occurrence with the Colts. I mean, going into week 1, what was it? Carson Wentz was potentially not playing. Quentin Nelson was potentially not playing. Since then, they've lost a young player at safety, Julia Blackman, Paris Campbell being out again. It's just how it is with the Colts. Everyone gets hurt all the time. It's just, and the DeForest Buckner one's actually hilarious when you look at it right there.
Yeah,
too.
abdomen, throat, back. I want to give a shout out to the guy down at the bottom right that made the comment. DeForest Buckner coming into Highmark Stadium on Sunday looking like John Wick.
Yeah.
That's a quality comment.
So-
What caught me is, you're talking about some starters here. You're talking about some impactful players. TJ Carey just came back. You were just getting him back off injured reserve, already back on there with the DNP. Eric Fisher.
Buckner just came back.
Yeah, Buckner just coming back. And I know I as I'm kind of researching, you'd commented on, hey, some of this pass rush starting to come back here. Well, now all of a sudden, if you have Buckner, Odiingbo not at their level where you need it, are you going to see that? So just from your gut here, obviously we'll watch it as it progresses during the week. Are you concerned that some of these guys may miss the game with this DNP? Do you think it's just the conservative nature of the reporting on it, or are there any in particular you're keeping an eye on?
Honestly, the biggest one's obviously Eric Fisher at left tackle with that back injury. We didn't really hear much about that after the game. It might be just kind of a maintenance thing. But that's definitely one to watch. Darius Leonard's a psycho. He'll play even if he can't move. So I'm not too worried there. Dio's just still coming back from that Achilles injury, so I feel like he'll be playing. Brandon Smith, again, just kind of came back from that elbow last week and still played, so he should be fine. Quentin Nelson, they actually said going into this practice that he wasn't going to practice, and then he goes out there and has a full practice. So
he's another psycho. He'll play.
Absolute psycho. He hasn't been fully healthy this year. He's still playing like a Pro Bowl level guard. And then DeForest Buckner actually tweeted out on his Twitter that he was reading all the comments to what people were saying about his injury report. He said he's fine. It was probably more maintenance than anything with him. So the Colts do kind of take it a little easy on Wednesday practices, sometimes even on Thursdays too. Friday practice is really the only thing that I look at personally when it comes to these injury reports. So, a couple guys on there, but a couple of them are guys who just came back from an injury.
So probably, like you said, probably kind of maintenance, taking it easy, coming off their first game back.
Yeah, TJ Carey just came back. Dio's came back 2 weeks ago. Braden Smith came back just last week. So it is kind of, it's kind of fluid there, but I'll start worrying on Friday if it looks like this.
Well, that was going to be my next question for you. Like, we know the Bills, like, if you don't get one full practice during the week, that guy's not going to go. I'm assuming the Colts are the same way. Not all teams are that way, but are the Colts pretty much that way? If there's a do not participate in practice leading into Friday, should Bills fans expect that player not to be active?
Sometimes there's some players that are opposite, like or not opposite, but like who don't kind of apply. Like Darius Leonard, I think, is one that doesn't really apply to that. If he doesn't practice the whole week, there's still a chance, I think. T.Y. Hilton, I know in 2018, went the whole last 2 months of the year without practicing because he was so banged up, but he played every game and still had over 1,000 yards receiving. Just some of these guys are insane with how they
something
do that.
in the water out there in Indy.
Yeah, there is, man. But yeah, so there are a couple players that, they're usually pretty candid about telling us after the game if the guy's going to be good to go or not. But I think Darius Leonard's probably one to watch there. But again, I still think he'll probably end up going in this game.
All right, so I'm going to jump right into it, man. You've been on our show before. You know how we run through this stuff. Let's go right into it. You talked about Carson Wentz, so let's go right to the quarterback position. We were talking a little bit off air. I think Twitter's too hard on Carson Wentz. I want to put that out there right now. I don't think he's as bad as Twitter wanted to bury him to be, but I don't think he's as good as that run he had with the Eagles where people were talking about this guy being an MVP, top of the league type quarterback. An average QB is a QB you can win with. I think Carson Wentz is a guy you can win with, and we're seeing him not turn the ball over, and that's what's really huge here for the Colts, right? So I know you were really hard on him. I read some of your articles about his mechanics this offseason. I'm surprised that you didn't get killed more by Colts Twitter for being hard on him, but it was objective, right? Like you really dove into what some of the problems that he had and with his downfall. Knowing his mechanics, knowing some of those issues, what are you seeing out of him now as he's starting to settle into this Colts offense? Is some of that stuff going away, or are the Colts just sort of disguising some of his faults?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a little bit of both. And it's funny, in the offseason, it's easy to be hard on Wentz because, 2020, even if you're the most diehard Carson Wentz supporter, that you think Carson Wentz is the greatest quarterback to ever exist, 2020 you can't defend. It was that bad. It was just an awful, awful season. So there was so much to fix. And, kind of like I said at the beginning here, the whole point of this season is to see if he's broken or not. You trade a first and third round pick for this guy. He can't come in looking like he did last year. And in a way, the numbers don't lie. He's played a lot better football. His mechanics have cleaned up a lot. You could tell he's done a lot of great work in the offseason. And we've seen stretches of really, really strong play. He was kind of banged up the first 3 weeks, and those were against pretty tough defenses in the Titans, Rams, and Seahawks. So there were like tough pass rushes, tough teams that are going to come after him. But after that, he's played pretty well. I mean, he stepped up on that Monday night game against the Ravens and gave them a shot to win. He's had a couple of down performances in there, but for the most part, I think it's been some solid play. And I think the way that I would describe it is an average quarterback. He's played like an overall average quarterback, guy that you can win with, but there will be some duds and there will be some moments where he's not like a Josh Allen. He's not a guy who's not gonna propel your roster to a higher level, at least at the moment, from what we've seen. So I still think the jury's still out on him, seeing what he can do the rest of the year with this really tough stretch coming up. But as of right now, he's surpassed my expectations personally, just being an average quarterback, because 2020 was so bad. We're talking, DVOA, I think, had him as like the 35th ranked quarterback in the NFL. Like he was terrible.
Yeah.
So to have him at the level where, he can win games for you, he can play pretty well. And he's got 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions to get that to that level. I think that's a big win. So it's just kind of seeing where he can go to next, especially in these big games coming up.
Before we move on from QB, in watching the Colts, and Carson still has some of that, he's making some plays on the run, under pressure, getting the ball out. That interception number really stands out to me, how low it is right now. Do you think that's sustainable for him going forward? Because he gets pretty loose with the ball. He's not a conservative quarterback in some of those situations, and he's put the ball in harm's way a number of times. He's not getting intercepted. Do you think he's going to be able to sustain a low turn? The Colts are not turning the ball over in general, but do you think Wentz can continue to
I think that one ridiculous one out of the end zone, they counted as a fumble. So there's one that I think is on the other side of the column.
Yeah, I don't think keeping it to like 3 is super sustainable. We saw it was that 49ers game, the one that you were talking about there with the interception turn fumble. He threw 3 other dropped interceptions in that game too. Right. Now it was a monsoon, so maybe there is a little bit there, but he's not a guy he's not like a game manager, take it easy, no risk type of guy. He's going to throw interceptions. He's going to commit turnovers. Keeping it at 3 is kind of more of a testament to, one, the Colts are giving him a lot of really easy, not like super easy, but like 1-2 read plays. If it's not here, go here. If it is here, go there. Stuff like that. It's
not to Pittman, go to Taylor. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of high-low concepts or whatever against zone or man, where it's like, hey, if the high guy's not there, then you're going to be able to hit the low. Like that. It's basically that. So it's kind of taking a lot of the thinking out of the game for him, which has been great. And then also, you have a guy like Jonathan Taylor who you can just dump it down to. He'll get you 40 yards on the check down.
Well, let's talk about
that stuff.
Let's talk about Jonathan Taylor. I don't want to do it, but we have to do it for the show.
Yes, I'd prefer you don't.
Yeah, no, this is keeping me up all week here. We saw what he did to the Bills in the playoff game. I've never seen a team play from behind and have so much confidence in their run game and it actually work to get them back in a game like we saw in that playoff game. So that memory has scarred me for life. I want nothing to do with Jonathan Taylor. I watching you guys all week in preparation for this guy's on another level, athletically, vision, all of it. He's the total package of running back. Here's your opportunity to gush over him for a second and let Bills fans know what to expect this weekend.
Yeah, and it's funny we don't have Eric Turner on here because he would gush even more than me. He would gush even more. We literally did like an hour and a half film session before the playoff game last year, just talking about Jonathan Taylor and like the Colts duo concepts. But I think honestly, Jonathan Taylor in this offense is the perfect marriage of a very diverse, strong run game with a super, super talented running back who's only getting better. Honestly, with Derrick Henry out right now, I think Jonathan Taylor's the best running back in football, pound for pound, best running back in football, especially this year. It was funny, like early last season, there were so many people talking about his vision being an issue, and I was one of them. He was not seeing the proper holes. Now, if you look at from beginning of last year to now, he might have the best vision in football. I mean, he's seeing things before they're even developing. He's reading plays perfectly. He's running through tackles. I think he's second in the NFL in yards after contact behind just Derrick Henry. And he's getting these big gashing plays, these big chunk plays where even analytics people who would say like, oh, the run game is not super sustainable. That's not how you get the chunk plays, not how you win. Well, Jonathan Taylor's getting that in the run game, and then he's also adding an element in the passing game. Okay. I mean, he went over 1,000 total yards for the season, I think, in week 8. He's just an outstanding player, and I kind of had the sense that it was going to happen this year. Before the year, Frank Reich and the offensive staff, they are never like a bell cow type of staff. They've always had Naeem Hines, Jordan Wilkins working in, Marlon Mack working in. They've never had a bell cow running back, but all off season, whenever anyone asked, they would know like, oh, Taylor's our guy. He's our bell cow. Like they were not hesitant. And we're seeing this year that Jonathan Taylor is, he might have the inside track for, offensive player of the year. Mm-hmm. And he's playing that well. He's probably going to have over 2,000 total yards with the way he's playing. So yeah, he's just an outstanding young player. And he's just been the team MVP so far. Big reason why they're winning a lot of these games that they're winning.
Yeah. And, you can't talk about what he's been able to do without talking about this offensive line. And I tweeted it out here this week. The Titans were a physical matchup, but that was more, Derrick Henry's just such a physical guy. I don't know that the Titans presented a lot of physical problems for the Bills, but I think this Colts team is a very physical team on both sides of the ball. And I think this is probably the most physical matchup for the Bills. This is a big test, in my opinion, physically where they're at, but it starts in the trenches. And I believe football's won. I'm still an old school guy. I believe football's won in the trenches. In that playoff game last year, we were talking offline, the Bills had no right winning that game because the Colts won in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So that running game really does start with this offensive line. Again, feel free. We were talking offline. Quentin Nelson hurt, still playing at a high level, even injured. Clearly, you don't usually take a guard there, but when you have a chance to take almost a guarantee Hall of Famer, if he stays healthy, you do it. And it's really just changed the whole culture in Indy. And even with bad quarterback play, you guys can still stay competitive because of this offensive line and running game. Again, the floor is yours. Tell us about this offensive line. And, the Bills have a good defensive line, but they're going to have their hands full here this weekend. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think in the run game, this is one of the best run blocking offensive lines in football. Eric Fisher, for the issues that he does have in pass blocking, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second, he's been outstanding as a run blocker, especially of late. Him and Quentin Nelson on those duos and combo blocks, it's just been nearly unstoppable. Mm-hmm. Ryan Kelly, obviously, is a Pro Bowl caliber center, playing really good football. And then Braden Smith coming back from his injury is kind of playing like the tackle they paid him to be, the top 10 right tackle in the league. Their right guard spot's actually interesting. They're kind of rotating two guys. They're having Chris Reed come in a little bit and play, and then Mark Lewinsky, who they've had since 2018. They're both kind of rotating. It's kind of like a Patriots type of rotation. That I know the Patriots have done that for a couple of years, where they kind of go with the hot hand at guard, which is interesting. But it's worked pretty well, and I think whenever they get in one of those guys, they're both playing to the best of their ability, like in a way like they're playing to like their peak play, which is very interesting. And on paper that wouldn't work, but it is as of right now. In the passing game, they're pretty strong across the board except Eric Fisher. Eric Fisher just does not have a good anchor at all. Some of that is probably because he came back from the Achilles injury. Another part of that's kind of always who he's been. It's hard to get that into Colts fans' mind because they see the Pro Football Focus grades and stuff and being like, oh, he was a top 10 left tackle. Like, not really. Was he?
Not really. But if there's one way for the Bills to exploit this offensive line, it's Eric Fisher on the side. But I think this one comment says it well. If Starr is out in this game, if you guys are going to have to go like a little lighter on the interior or anything like that, the Colts are going to kill you with duo. Yeah, the Colts are just devastatingly powerful up front with their duo and combo blocks. So the only ways to really beat that is have a nose tackle that can win at the point of attack and not get moved, or have your linebackers playing out of this world. And the Jaguars actually... That's
why my sign, I need a healthy Tremaine Edmonds heading into this game.
And, to give the Jaguars credit, I think the first two drives they gave up like 90-something yards rushing to Jonathan Taylor. which it was like on 8 carries for like 95 yards in the first 2 drives. But after that, I think it was 11 carries for 23 yards. And a big reason for that was the play of Miles Jack and that linebacker group. So if you're not going to have your guys win in those duo situations up front, you're like interior defensive line, if you guys are going to go a little lighter there or something, your linebackers need to play out of this world. And the Bills do have the linebackers that can, but it's going to be a dogfight down there. This O-line just loves to punish guys up front.
Yeah. Now let's talk about some of the, skill positions here. I know Eric was a big fan of Michael Pittman. He started really coming into his own here this year. And T.Y. Hilton coming back a little bit, and Pascal, who's kind of a sneaky receiver out there in Indy, just pretty consistent guy. I don't think a lot of people think of him all that much, but definitely a consistent contributor. And I actually love your guys' tight end room. I'm not going to lie. I love Doyle and Mo Alley Cox. Again, not world beaters, but guys that are consistent and can, you put so much pressure on linebackers with the run game that it creates some openings for these guys in the middle of the field. Looking at this matchup, I think the Bills do have one of the better secondaries and back sevens in the NFL. How do you see the Colts, Michael Pittman continuing this success? I'm thinking Tre'Davious White is going to shadow Pittman here throughout the day. Do you think they can continue to have some of the success that they've had and target this secondary, or are they going to really stick to the run in this game?
Yeah, it's tough because on paper, outside of Michael Pittman Jr., there's probably no one across the board who can win their matchups against this Bills secondary. The Bills secondary is awesome. I think it's up there as, top. If it's not the best secondary in the league, it's definitely one of the top 2 or 3. Just an outstanding secondary from top to bottom with good depth as well. They're just playing outstanding. Best safety tandem in football for sure.
Absolutely.
And I don't think there's really anyone who could win one-on-one matchups for the Colts outside of Michael Pittman Jr., who's playing like a top receiver this year. I mean, he's just been phenomenal. Even Trey White, I think, would have not like be getting beat by him constantly, but I think it would be a dogfight.
It's going to be hard day, yeah.
Yeah, be an absolute dogfight. I do think one benefit that the Colts kind of have is Leslie Frazier kind of comes from a coaching tree that, the Colts are familiar with, that Frank Reich's familiar with, that Matt Eberflus, the Colts defense coordinator, is familiar with. So they kind of do know how to attack that scheme a little bit. I'm not saying that, you can kill Leslie Frazier's defense. Leslie Frazier was an outstanding defensive coordinator, but I do think they know ways to attack it. Like we saw in that playoff game, Phillip Rivers coming in to cold Buffalo and having an outstanding game when he could barely throw the ball past 10 yards. And the Colts were still able to move the ball through the air in that game by using the tight ends, by using Michael Pittman Jr. on screens and crossers. I think we'll see a lot of that in the passing game, but I do think for the most part, it's going to be, we're going to ride Jonathan Taylor and maybe some Nyheim Hines, and we're going to get them the ball in space. And hopefully they can get us into some third and manageable situations.
Flipping over to the other side of the ball, it's an area that I think a lot of people expected a pretty solid defense so far this year. Obviously, health has been a big factor, but one of the questions was up front, who else was going to step up outside of a monster in DeForest Buckner? You have some of the draft investments that were made. Odiengbo get into his spot. Kwity Paye kind of coming into his own now. How have some of those other pieces around Buckner really been able to develop as the year has gone? I think Grover Stewart's a name that a lot of people don't know, but is playing some really sound, defense in the middle there, taking up that space next to Buckner. How has that started to develop? I know there was maybe some concern early on in the year, but it seems to be coming together as the year goes.
Yeah, for sure. Coming into the year, it was actually a big reason why, in my opinion, why the Colts lost that playoff game was against, the playoff game against the Bills, is they had Danico Autry, who's been outstanding so far this year for the Titans. And they had Justin Houston rushing off the edge. And those guys just did not have the athleticism to keep a guy like Josh Allen in the pocket. They just didn't have it. And I think it kind of got to the Colts' minds, like, we need to go younger. We need to go more athletic. And they did that by drafting Kwity Paye and Dayo Adeyembo. And those guys are going to take some time. They're not going to be Justin Houston or Danico Autry. And they certainly haven't been by any means. But I think we have seen them kind of growing. Dayo came back just, I think, 3 weeks ago. He's slowly getting into the action. Kwity Paye, I think it's the 4th most pressures in the last 2 games among all pass rushers in the NFL. And I think he's also like really highly rated in the run game and stuff by Pro Football Focus. Like they love what he's doing this year too.
Yeah, I think 9 2 games ago and 7 this last game. 16 in 2 games is legit.
Yeah, I think it's like 6 quarterback hits, 2 in that span, and a sack. So, yeah, he's really coming along. And then the craziest one has been Taylor Stallworth, defensive tackle, 26-year-old defensive tackle who coming into this year had 3 career sacks and I think 2 quarterback hits. The last 2 games, he has 3 sacks and 4 quarterback hits. Just playing some really good football. And he actually looks like, I mean, he's beating guys cleanly. Like, and it's not just scrubs. It's Elijah Vera Tucker that he's beating clean. Or I can't think of the really good guard that's in Jacksonville, but former Pro Bowler
Norwell.
guard.
Norwell.
Yeah, Norwell. He was beating Norwell in Jacksonville. So he's winning these matchups one-on-one clean. Now, I don't know if it's for real. Like, I still have no clue
how sustainable it might be. But
yeah, 800 career snaps it took to get to 3 sacks. And then his last 55 snaps, it took him to get the 3 more sacks. So I don't know. I don't know how sustainable it is, but I'm loving it right now. So yeah, this defensive line's coming along. I don't think they're as good as what they were last year with Houston and Autry, but that wasn't really the point. The point was to get younger, get faster, get these cheaper contracts there, and hopefully these guys can go off. And I think we are seeing them slowly grow and get better and actually add some talent around DeForest Buckner.
Well, and in the back 7, it's, in my mind, it's kind of top heavy. You have the guys that people know the name of. Darius Leonard's obviously fantastic. Maybe at the beginning of the year not playing at his all-world level, but has really continued to come on as it's gone. Kenny Moore is a guy that I've always been a huge fan of. Just such a versatile, movable piece. How are the other pieces holding up on their end of the bargain? When you have Darius Leonard there, Bobby Okereke is a guy that gets picked on, is a focus of offensive game plans. If you're going to go after a guy, you're not going to go after Leonard. You're going to try to get Okereke isolated and get him out in space. How is that working? Where it feels like, is this Colts defense still missing a piece or two to get to where it needs to get to? And how are they patching that together when Rock Ya-Sin is a name that a lot of people liked here. I don't think a lot of people know Isaiah Rodgers or some of the other guys who are getting reps here. But, with the number of snaps you're seeing, Andrew Sendejo is a guy that you probably don't want to see playing as many snaps as what he is. How is that coming together when some of the other pieces are such stalwarts in that group?
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of like a big difference in play, and it was funny because when you look at Darius Leonard and Kenny Moore, those guys are really, really good players, 2 of the top players at their position, but they are more playmakers than they are consistent, like lockdown, shutdown guys.
Flash.
Which offenses have to be wary of. I mean, if you're Josh Allen, you're going to be scared of the 2 guys who can change a game around completely. I mean, those are what those guys are, but they're not guys who can lock it down. What we're kind of seeing this year is, as a result, with those guys still just being playmakers that are kind of inconsistent, and then some injuries in the back 7, we're seeing the Colts have one of the worst pass defenses in the league, which is not great going into a game against the Buffalo Bills. They have the Colts have the number 1 run defense, and I think like the 25th pass defense. They have given up the most passing touchdowns this year. But I do think there are some positive things to take away along with some negatives. At safety, they're really banged up. Julian Blackmon out for the year with the torn ACL, or I think it was a torn Achilles. One of those. I think might have been a torn Achilles recently with him. And then Kari Willis, who started last year's game, obviously against the Bills and played pretty well.
Yeah, I love Willis.
Yeah, he's also going to be out this week. So they're going with Andrew Sendejo and maybe their special team guy, George Odom, maybe Josh Jones, who was picked up a couple weeks ago. It's really, really thin at safety. So that's obviously a big concern. But at corner, I think they've been playing pretty well. The 2 young guys, Rock Ya-Sin and Isaiah Rodgers, have played pretty solid cornerback 2 types this year. Which Isaiah Rodgers was a 6th-round pick who was a Dane Brugler 78th rated quarterback coming into that draft. He's played some good snaps for them and made some plays. And Rock Ya-Sin's finally not a bust. He's actually playing like a solid cornerback too. I think I put a stat on Twitter that he's Pro Football Focus's 20th rated coverage corner this year, right behind Levi Wallace and Trey White. But it's fine. It's fine. he's 20th in coverage grade. So yeah, I think we're seeing some guys step up, some young guys step up, but the secondary is very exploitable. There's gonna be open zones to throw into. Darius Leonard likes to bite up on the run. He likes to kind of come up on the quarterback. So he's going to vacate that middle of the field. We saw that a little bit in the playoff game. And now without having Julian Blackmon or Corey Willis in the back end, they don't really have the safeties that are going to be able to come down and kind of close that space.
Yeah, be able to clean up.
Yeah, so the middle of the field is going to be wide open, and it's just going to be up to Buffalo to take advantage. I will say anytime that the Bills run the ball in this game will be a win for the Colts, because you can't do anything more useless than running the ball in the Colts, because you could pass so easily on them. So just attack the middle of the field, and I think that the Bills will have success. But overall, just someone who covers the Colts and covers the team, I have liked the progress of some players on defense, but the defense as a whole is probably not where it needs to be to do what the Jaguars did to the Bills a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So before we get you out of here, let us know, what kind of game do you expect? What's the score prediction?
I think it's going to be more competitive than maybe what some people would say, probably what a lot of Bills fans would say. But I do think ultimately, the Bills have so much more talent. I mean, I think one of the best offenses in the league, one of the best defenses in the league, two of the best coordinators, one of the best head coaches. I love everything about the Bills. I came on here last year gushing about them before that playoff game. So I would say something like, I would say like 38-28 Bills. I think the Colts throw some good punches in there, but ultimately the Bills are just a better football team.
No, we appreciate it, man. Let the folks know where they can find your work and where to come check out more of what you do.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Zach Hicks 2. I'm the lead analyst over at SI Colts, Sports Illustrated Colts. Write a lot of apparently hit pieces on Carson Wentz, but they're supposed to just be very objective analysis on his play. But for everyone who hates on what you do, there's also people who love what you do. So if you guys want to check that out, Sports Illustrated Colts at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter.
Well, we love what you do, and we miss you over here on the Cover One team, man.
Yeah, man. Life is busy. It's tough to too many things in the basket, but I always love you guys. I've known you guys for so long. Eric, obviously, for a super long time as well. You guys always do some great stuff, and honestly, when Eric was talking circles around me on that Jonathan Taylor film room last year.
He talks circles around all of them.
Yeah, we just pretend to keep up half the time. It's fine.
Yeah, dude, we just pretend like we're listening to it.
Yeah. We totally understand everything. All right, man. Thank you very much, Zach. We
Thanks
appreciate
so much,
it.
man.
We'll talk to you soon. Hope for a fun, healthy for
Healthy.
both teams.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good, entertaining game. Everybody have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome.
So obviously, always great to have Zach on. He's one of our best guests to go through and talk through with Colts, and love where he always draft work. You guys check out a lot of stuff that he does over at SI Colts, and again, a great follow for draft time of year. As we kind of shift gears here, for anyone who wasn't listening, there were some exciting announcements here in the world of Cover One this week. Two names that well from the Bills Mafia content Twitter sphere that we welcome to the team. Our guys over at the Air Raid Hour, Steve Mathis, Dave Tillman. What's going on? Welcome to the team.
Good.
It's weird not having a background right now. I got to get on that. So you see my TV. I got my Josh Allen jersey back there.
Yeah,
but
that chair looks really comfortable though.
The chair's good. But I need to get myself situated here with the right proper backdrop.
But Steve, I think you're still muted.
Yeah, amateur hour over here.
And I just realized my background is the same color as the Colts colors, so that might be
yeah, with the shirt, the background, it looks like your Colts background.
That was a mistake.
Secret Carson Wentz stand over here.
Yeah.
So obviously, for anyone who isn't aware, you're going to be able to hear the Air Raid Hour is a new preview show leading into game days, getting you guys ready for everything that's going on. And then Monday nights, going to be joining us here on the network. Obviously, a lot of fans excited to be able to see you guys coming aboard. We've been big fans of everything you guys have been doing, not only for Bills coverage, but obviously really good draft coverage, all kinds of other things. We're excited about the opportunities to be able to get you involved in everything on the network. Before we get into a little bit of fun here, let them know a little bit about yourselves and about what they can expect to hear from the show. Dave, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so the show's been going for almost 3 years. Steve and I started the show without even knowing each other a couple years back, just on an off chance that we got together. Started off recording on Anchor a long time ago, eventually kind of moved our way around and got hooked up with Fanatics, as you guys know, for a little while. And we really get deep into like roster construction, roster theory type stuff. And obviously, like you mentioned, Greg, the draft is such a big part of what we do. And we spend a lot of time on draft research every year, really trying to like make it Bills centric, right? What kind of guys fit the Bills schemes, what kind of guys the Bills have met with, and really try to like narrow down a target prospect list for the fans so they can kind of like not get overwhelmed by like looking at 300, 400, prospects every year. So we really love doing that. And obviously the game previews and reactions are kind of our bread and butter as well. So a lot of cool, like different little things we do, but yeah, we're happy, man. We're excited. And yeah, Steve, what else you got to say, man?
I think that our show can best be described as me getting probably irrationally upset at something and just yelling and screaming, and then Dave coming in with like factual things to sort of back up what I'm trying to say and what point I'm trying to get across. I believe the phrase.
It's a partnership.
I believe the phrase in the comment section of our shows is they call it my man period is what they've been calling it. So that's what unfortunately I become known for. But yeah, I mean, we just have a good time. We're just two dudes, sit back, talk Buffalo Bills football, try to do it in a semi-intelligent way. And the comment section, that's one thing that we love about our show. They're the third host of our show every single week, and we just love communicating and interacting with them, and they just make the experience so much better for us. So we're happy we can continue to do it on such a great network.
That's awesome. So one way we thought we could introduce for the fans who aren't familiar with your work, I know lots of folks obviously here in the chat here, and all the folks who are very familiar with what you do and excited to have you as a part of our team. One thing Aaron and I want to do, we're at the halfway point. We want to do a little bit of a
there's no real halfway point now that we went.
Yeah,
can I just say I don't like the 17 games?
No,
I like 16.
You're not alone.
It's
like
so
even
weird.
Things.
Like teams are going to go 9-8 or 8-9, and like there might be a playoff team that's 8-9, and now
and I
10
like
and
having
7.
quarters of the season. Like I hate all this.
Do you know how ugly of a record 11-6 is? Like that's such an ugly record. Like it doesn't even look aesthetically pleasing. I'm frustrated by it.
My theory,
but anyways,
I want 21 weeks, 18 games, 3 bye weeks.
The bye week, I can't go down that tangent right now. The fact that they added this and didn't add a second bye where you could have easily fit that in and had it perfectly. And now, like some teams had a bye at week 4 and then are going to go for 13 weeks. And then some teams have gone 13 weeks and are going to have a bye in week 14 is just asinine.
Can we get rid of Thursday Night Football while we're fixing all the schedule?
Yeah, while we're throwing things out there. But what we thought we would do was be able to go through some awards to be able to kick things off. And we thought that would be a good way to introduce yourselves to some of the folks who hadn't had a chance to hear your insights before. So we'll start out here. And I know, David, when we go into what we're thinking for, Rookie of the Year, what were some of your thoughts for Rookie of the Year for the Buffalo Bills, where you look at, normally it's the flashy, exciting skill position players. Where was your head at?
So let me qualify by telling you kind of what I took into account when deciding how to assess Rookie of the Year. Obviously, for me, I look at draft position and where the player was drafted, right? First round all the way down to 7th. And I kind of try to figure out, like expectations based on the round the player was drafted, right? And we all know the Bills drafted at the very end of the first round. So maybe your expectations are going to be different even within a round. But Greg Rousseau was obviously coming out of the gates hot. Made that big interception against the Chiefs. He's been kind of stuffing the box score as much as you really can for a rotational defensive line like the Bills have. And, the guy's only playing like around 50% of the snaps. And he's got some good numbers, but he's a first round pick. And I know people were kind of like, well, let's pump the brakes on him a little bit this year. And it's panned out for him. I'm not taking anything away from him. But for me, I look at a guy like Spencer Brown, who's drafted in the 3rd round. Wasn't one of the first tackles picked in the draft, coming from a small school in Northern Iowa, didn't play tackle until he got to college and during his football career. And even per Brandon Beane's comments after the draft, the expectations for Spencer Brown were that he's going to come in and be the swing tackle backup in 2021. And that was the expectation. Fast forward, a few weeks into the season, interior of the line. Yes, 3 weeks in, interior of the line is struggling. Bills do a shakeup. They slide Darrell Williams inside, get Cody Ford out of the lineup, and all of a sudden Spencer Brown's playing right tackle. And in his 4 starts, he's played 100% of the snaps. And in the games that he's started, the Bills are 3-1. They're averaging about 20 to 30 more rushing yards per game with Spencer Brown in the lineup. And like I tweeted before the show as a little tease, he's the 4th highest rated pass blocking rookie per PFF this year, behind guys that were 2 of which were drafted in the top 15 in Slater and Sewell. And then the other guy, Samuel Cosme, was drafted in the 2nd round. So I look at that those grades and then kind of try to put context around it. Okay, well, let me take a look in and see, like, are the Bills actually running the ball better with him in the lineup? And they actually are, right? The rushing statistics prove that out. And that all is great. All that quantitative stuff is great. And you get that value out of the third round. But he also brings an element of attitude and swagger to the line, the whole group, where you look at a guy like Cody Ford, who's now on the bench, who the Bills just traded up to pick, and, he kind of forced their hand, right? Got Spencer Brown in the lineup earlier than maybe Bills fans were anticipating, and probably all of us were, most of us were, and he's played well. He'll go through his growing pains, obviously, but it's clear that when he's in the lineup, it's the Bills' best configuration that they can put on the field right now. So for me, I'm putting all those things into account. When he was drafted, play on the field, playing 100% of the snaps when he's in there starting. So I'm giving Spencer Brown Rookie of the Year at the halfway point.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think obviously it does come down to Rousseau and Brown, just with the depth and the talent of the veteran players on the team. There's not that many snaps for some of the other guys there, but right. I think you're hard pressed to be able to do it. I think it's fine to award it to Rousseau, but I think Brown's a great pick, and I think the potential. Aaron and I were very much on the board of, hey, we love the pick, we're excited about him. Talk to me in 2022 or 2023. Yeah. I'm not ready for this. Like, you talk to me later on.
Well, we were all mad because we wanted a guard, right? It's like,
Well, and the fact that he was ready
I still want a guard
sooner than what we thought was exciting to be able to do that. Yes. And to see, I think we were concerned, well, what does that mean for Williams? Seeing him play as well as he has at guard has almost made it a double bonus to be able to get him in there, get his athleticism outside. So that's where I think that's an exciting part.
Just makes it worse for Cody Ford, though.
Hey,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, hey, that's a sunk cost at this point. We got to be able to figure out what to do next. So Steve, one of the next awards we were going into was Coach of the Year. And I think there's a lot of different ways to go there. Where was your head at for Coach of the Year?
Yeah, I see a couple people in the comment section just asking what time our show is going to be airing. So I just wanted to answer that real quick.
Sure.
Sunday's pregame. So typically on a game day Sunday at 1:00 is the game. So we'll be going live from 11 to 12:30. So we'll be live pregame all the time. That'll sort of replace the Thursday show that we used to do. And then we will still be live every Monday at 9 p.m. just here on the Cover One Sports Network. So pre-games, it might be a little bit different depending on the primetime games. We'll let you guys know on social media and scheduling and stuff. And then our typical Monday at 9 p.m. slot. So that's when you will be able to catch us. But as for Coach of the Year, I went with Leslie Frazier. And I mean, there are a ton of like great stories on the coaching staff. Like BuffaloBills.com just released that awesome video on Chad Hall.
That was fantastic.
Like, that was fantastic. And I mean, you talk about the secondary, you could talk about the secondary coach and a bunch of different things. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, you could talk about Bob Babbage Jr. Like, there's a ton of guys, position coaches you can talk about. But at the end of the day, this defense is number one in DVOA. They lead the league in turnovers. How can it not be Leslie Frazier? The statistical numbers of the quarterbacks who go up against us this year are just awful. Even in the losses, the quarterbacks can't throw the football on us. And this is the National Football League, a passing league where everything is catered to offenses and the quarterback. So I used to give Leslie Frazier a ton of crap. I mean, I've been on record saying that a team hiring him as their head coach would be the equivalent of signing Andy Dalton to be their starting quarterback. And I'm starting to think that I was dead wrong. And he has proven me wrong. And I think even at the age of 62, he deserves a chance to possibly be a head coach again in the National Football League. And that was even further reinforced. Please don't ask me why I was listening to this, but I was listening to AJ Klein's interview on the Pod Squad. So I happened to come across the Pod Squad, not something that I typically normally listen to. But AJ Klein was talking about Leslie Frazier a little bit, and some of the things that he said about him. He said that he had clear vision and he communicates well. And I think every week, but maybe the Tennessee week, that shows up. We've executed for all 4 quarters of every single football game. We lead the league in turnovers. That's no coincidence. The players know exactly where they need to be. And because they know exactly where to be and feel so comfortable, it frees their mind to be instinctual and to make those plays that force turnovers. He talked about how they have a different game plan each week for their opponent as opposed to their own philosophy. We just saw us beat the New York Jets this week because they refused to leave what they do best to cater to what the Bills don't do best. Like they refuse to change their defensive style. So You saw it in the Miami week, taking away those first reads from Tua with the safeties. You saw against Mike White, just dropping everybody back and leaving him no windows, where he eventually threw 5 turnovers. So Leslie Frazier really he's doing a whole bunch of things this year, and I'm sure he's done them in years past as well. But I mean, just the way that we're able to carry over the personnel on this defense year after year after year, it's really starting to pay dividends for Leslie Frazier, this defense, and the Buffalo Bills in general.
No, it's fantastic. And I think, for everybody listening here, that's kind of insight you're going to hear on the Air Raid Hour and their preview coming up before every game, jumping in to be able to give a new, fresh, perspective here on the Cover One Network. We're really excited to be able to have you guys aboard. Let the guys know and everybody where they can see you on social media and where to find your show in all the different feeds that are going out.
Yeah, for sure. You guys can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis. You can find Dave on Twitter at Tilt Money. On Twitter, we are also the Bills Guys. That is our show channel, the original title of our show before we got the old C&D from the Buffalo Bills. You guys are plenty familiar with that.
Yeah. They don't like it when you use the term Bills. You're not allowed to use that for anything.
Oh,
anymore.
sorry. We were the redacted guys on Twitter. And you can find the show, the Air Raid Hour. It'll be every Sunday pregame, and it'll be every Monday night at 9 p.m. right after the Cover One Roundup at 9 p.m. So we're really looking forward to this opportunity with you guys, and thank you guys a lot. We really appreciate it.
Oh, looking forward to
We're
it.
happy to have you, man.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. Looking forward to it. You guys make sure you're checking them out. We'll talk to you guys here and see you this Sunday. I think we'll see your debut show.
That'll be our first show, Sunday at 11.
Awesome. Looking
We're
forward
super
to it.
excited.
Cool.
Have a good one,
Thanks,
gents.
guys.
Thanks for coming out,
Appreciate
guys.
Obviously, really exciting addition to the team here at Cover One, and obviously people that we've interacted with for a long time and been involved in. We know it's always different to be able to see people moving around to different parts of the content creation world, but we're really excited and fortunate to be able to have them as part of our squad here. But what do you think about the picks for Rookie of the Year and for Coach of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's exactly where I was going with my picks too. So it gets it out of the way. And they hit on a number of. I want to hit on a little bit with Leslie Frazier. Sure. I talk about this almost every week in the post game show. It pisses me off, Greg, that there's this idea. I don't want anyone to take Leslie Frazier from the Bills, but in terms of how we treat coaches in this league.
How much more prominently Dable gets brought up versus Frazier is crazy.
All the time. And then I heard on WGR, Ted DiBiase was on today, and he was talking about a Tom Pelissaro article about hot head coaching candidates. And they even mentioned Ken Dorsey over Leslie Frazier. And this is ridiculous at this point. It's crazy to me. I get that he's a defensive coach. So is Sean McDermott. Look what he's done in Buffalo. Leslie Frazier, I think people look at the overall record he had in Minnesota, but if you look at the situation that he was in Minnesota and what he was actually able to accomplish with that team is pretty phenomenal. And you just look at the steady hand he's had here in Buffalo. They've had good defenses throughout his tenure here. But there's been stretches of really poor defensive play during his time, and his steady hand and the patience to develop guys like Taron Johnson, to develop a guy like Levi Wallace, to gently call these guys out in public. Like, he's been very honest with the media. It's actually every week when we hear from the coordinators, my favorite thing is to hear from Leslie Frazier, because he's going to give you super honest, really insightful answers. Like, this guy is a gem, and for us to be able to hold on to him here in Buffalo, you're
sometimes even more insightful and transparent than probably McDermott even wants. Like, he just lays stuff out there sometimes. It's great.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge stan of Leslie's, and it's all sort of come to a head here this year with a really good defense under him for a long period of time, with coordinators that have been able to stay here for a long period of time. And you see what they're able to do. We talk a lot about Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer being able to disguise those coverages. Well, it's Leslie Frazier that's scheming this stuff up and putting that trust in these players to do those different unique things. And so I love him, and it's an absolute slam dunk. But there's some other candidates across the board here. We just saw in DVOA, the special teams are now third in the NFL, have taken a huge leap. And we talk about the coverage units all the time. So Farwell was my runner-up for Coach of the Year. But for me, it was hands down slam dunk Frazier.
I like that. We can even take this opportunity to be able to bring up the DVOA for the matchup. And you talk about that defense. The reason that Leslie Frazier, they're number one in the NFL with a bullet all season long. they have been right there, at times historic levels of defensive performance, and still very firmly first overall. Special
First in
teams,
pass, second, and then third in rush. So like they're top across the board.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And honestly, we talked about it. You went into detail with Zach and the matchup for this week. You see that 17th overall offense for the Colts. That's certainly not 17th in the rush. That run game with Jonathan Taylor is going to test every single bit of that run defense on the Bills side. And I'm cautiously optimistic about their ability to be there. I think that they had the right game plan with Derrick Henry, and I think that the way that they approached it was really smart through there. I think that they adjusted poorly in the second half. I'm hoping they learned from that.
Tough time to be without Star, though.
We're going to see there. Yeah, Star would have been a huge one this week, and I don't. Is that official that he's not going to be?
They're
brought back
skirting around. I don't. You would know the rules.
Yeah, well,
COVID
the hard part is
we
don't know his official status. So the fact that he hasn't already cleared protocol, I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to speculate.
Yes.
There's multiple different scenarios where he still could. That would be there. But again, with the rest of the DVOA matchups, the Bills are first overall to the Colts 10th overall. The Bills offense are 14th to the Colts 10th defense.
Couple average. Yeah.
The Colts are 17th in offense to the Bills' first defense. So obviously the Bills offense against the Colts defense is going to be really, I think, the deciding factor here. I think the Bills defense is going to be able to be strong against the Colts. They're not, no one's shutting down Jonathan Taylor for an entire game. No. He's going to be able to break one. He's going to get some things going. It's really, can the Bills passing offense take advantage of this beleaguered secondary and be able to get the ball moving forward? And then it does show that special teams, you go from 17th on, the Colts are 17th, the Bills are 3rd. Maybe that's a little bit of an edge. Maybe we get a special teams turnover. Isaiah McKenzie breaks a big one.
Or just field position.
Yeah, they flip-flop kickers. I know Rodrigo Blankenship's not back yet. They're still doing Michael Badgley. Yeah. Maybe that's a missed kick or something here that maybe you get a little bit of a bonus at some point here. But that's an interesting one to be able to take a look at.
Yeah, and the Colts, this is weird for the Colts because, like, I read to you, the Bills were first in pass defense, 3rd in rush defense, and you see the Colts are sitting there at the 10th overall defense, but they are 23rd against the pass and 2nd against the rush. So they're the top heavy towards the rush, but like you said, there's some opportunities in the pass game against this team, and it matches up with what Zach said about that secondary. And same on the offensive side of the ball here. We're talking about the struggles with Carson Wentz. Again, we know this is a run-heavy team, and it shows up in DVOA. They're 5th overall in the rush and 20th overall in the pass. So they are a very specific team. They're going to try to run the ball, and they're going to stop the run. And if they can do those two things to you, they're probably going to walk away with a win. But they're giving up a lot in the pass, and they're not gaining a lot in the pass. And we know that this is a passing league. So if the Bills can get that game to be the type of game they want, then they should be able to walk away with it.
When it shows up exactly like you just described in the explosive plays,
totally.
Their average in explosive pass. So I actually think that's even a little better than Zach let on. 29 is obviously more than.
But a lot of that is
the Bills are there, but
it's a lot of yak pass stuff. Like that's Jonathan Taylor taking a dump off and making an explosive play out of it. So it's an extension of their run game a little bit.
Yeah, 36 explosive runs is really impressive, 4th overall. And then you see the same thing on defense. They kind of average against the pass, but pretty strong against the run. 9th overall in explosive runs. The Bills, you can see how impressive it is. Only 19 explosive pass, 31st. So 2nd overall in the league. Only 18 explosive runs, 3rd in the league. That 18 explosive runs is going to be put to the test this week. That is going to be, in my mind, the key to the game. Can they limit the explosive big runs? We'll live with 10 and 15 and 20 yarders. You can't let them break off the 75 yarder that just immediately flips everything around and be able to get them back on the field. And you need to be able to take advantage. Those 33 explosive passes we saw the last couple games, you started to see a little bit more of that from the Bills offense.
Creeping into that top 10 in explosive passes. That's really these numbers that I generate every week. That explosive pass one has been too low for a Buffalo Bills offense with the type of weapons they have. And you saw last week, like you said, that ability to push it down a little bit. And I think they'll have, even though Colts are going to play a lot of that too, safety cover 2 shell that everybody's been talking about, that new buzzword. I don't think they do it at a consistent, efficient enough rate to stop the Bills from pushing the ball deep. So I think there's still going to be some opportunities there. And just a highlight for anyone watching and listening to this, the Bills have been 32nd in explosive pass and mostly explosive run for the year. They are still the best team, but they're tied with the Arizona Cardinals in 19. So they're tied for 31st. They're still the best in the league at limiting the explosive plays.
So as we kind of pivot back to some of the other awards, how about most improved? Where was your head at for the most improved Buffalo Bill for this year?
I feel like you just set it on a tee for me. Threw me a softball. This is Levi Wallace, right? Like it's got to be Levi. I mean, I think you can make a case for Taron Johnson, but we saw Taron starting to ascend towards the end of the year last year. So I don't know that he can get most improved for 2021. But as much as I've gotten accused of being a stand for Levi, but it's really been advocating for that he's adequate, right? Like this guy's fine for where he is and what he's needed to do. He's not getting roasted like people said. He does get a high percentage of targets, all that stuff. But he's taken a step forward this year, a legitimate step forward here halfway through this season, to where not only is he an adequate cornerback two, he's probably one of the top cornerback twos in the NFL, in my opinion. And the statistics are looking to match that. And he's added an aggressive point of attack, which that's something, I know we've had those conversations offline with Bruce Nolan a lot. He loves cornerbacks, and his big issue wasn't that Levi isn't a good cornerback. It was that he doesn't attack point of attack enough.
Plays on the ball.
Yes, plays on the ball, getting after it. And you're seeing that more with Levi here this year. And Anthony Prohauska, Pro-Ant on Twitter, put out a really nice play. And you're seeing this a lot from Levi, where he had great communication with Micah Hyde, passing off a receiver to Micah Hyde, and then he comes and makes a play on the ball and makes the tackle with Taron Johnson. It's that type of continuity and understanding of this defense and trust in this defense that has taken his play to another level. And I really think him not being somebody that is easily targeted when offenses need yards, they go after him and target him. And taking that step forward is really, in my opinion, what has allowed this defense to take that next step to being not just a top 10 defense, but really being the top defense in the NFL. So for me, he's my most improved. Where are you at?
So I didn't count Taron because, like you said, I think he took that step forward last year. He's been more consistent this year, but he was playing at that level last year and showed that. I came down to three guys for me. It was Levi Wallace, it was Dawson Knox, it was Ed Oliver. Dawson Knox, maybe if he had stayed healthy this whole time, would be more prominently in that role, because I think he did take a really impressive step forward. Just because you already talked about Levi, I want to talk about Ed Oliver. We were so desperate for someone on that line to take a step forward as like the prominent piece. We knew we had a high level of depth. We knew we had a really high floor where all 8, 9, 10 of our guys were talented and capable. Ed Oliver is starting to become that consistent game wrecker that can really, kind of just plant that seed of doubt in the offensive coach's mind that you have to game plan around. This week is going to be a big test for him. You're talking about a really talented front. He's not going to be that stout point of attack guy that stops it, but can his penetration disrupt some of the timing of their moves in the pulling and the duo that they get there? Can he disrupt that by breaking it up in the backfield and being able to disrupt some of those plays? So I think he deserves a shout out in the way that he's really stepped forward. We always knew the flashes were there, but Ed Oliver was my most improved player in the way that it's done. And I mentioned a guy that the next one we kind of talk about comeback player. Those kind of go hand in hand sometime with most improved. I'll give that shout to the other guy that I mentioned, Dawson Knox, in that just the way that fans approached him, the talent at the high end, but the drops, the inconsistency, the frustration. He's been, someone that I certainly was very critical of coming into the year, concerned about,
I was trying to tell you, Greg. I was trying, man.
We have, all these eggs in this basket. It's great if it works out, but what if it doesn't? We don't have any backup
Hope
plan
works.
here.
Hope is a plan.
Well, and I'll even say I took my little mini victory lap in the moments where he was out, that, hey, having another tight end would have been a good thing.
Yes.
It would have been okay.
Totally.
But it certainly showed that we didn't need to make the kind of investment for a starting caliber guy, because Dawson Knox was ready to be that starting caliber guy. So I give him my comeback player of the year in the way that he's really taken a big step forward and come back from those drops issues and the confidence problems that he had.
That's a good one. I'm going to go with Star Lotulelei for a comeback.
Literally
Obviously,
coming back.
And people were concerned of a year off.
Yep.
Will he be the same player? It's a different player. Like I was defending Star Lotulelei for
like
being
Utah. Star Lotulelei.
Yeah, I defended him for being, hey, this guy can maintain. He can take on two blockers and fill that gap and allow the linebackers to run free. But now he's getting penetration. Like Star Lotulelei is in the backfield on almost every snap. He is playing at a high level when he's out on the field, and hopefully they get him back this weekend. But Star, they raved about him in the preseason, and I wasn't sure that he was going to have this type of impact, but absolutely is super impactful on this defense. And that vet savvy, Eric had a clip in the game where Star occupied his blockers, but then he got a hand on the blockers, so they couldn't get a hand on Tremaine and allowed Tremaine to run free. And it's just that veteran presence in the middle of that defense that makes all the difference that they didn't have a year ago. So glad to have him back. And I think, Greg, we might have to be talking about, we were talking about how bad that contract looked with Star Lotulelei. We might be talking about how good that contract looks, and maybe a small extension coming up for Star if he can keep playing at this level.
I mean, if he's found this little fountain of youth that apparently is there, they won't need to extend him because it actually was.
Oh, yeah, it's two. Yeah,
we have 2 more years on the contract. It was something that was in the back of my mind.
And we have to keep him.
Yeah, even this next year, there still wasn't a very good out in the contract. The way that it got, told over and stretched out from his opt-out year, there's not even a ton of cap relief in cutting him next year. This year, you literally lost money by cutting him. So I kept telling people, I'm like, hey,
extend him and make that deal more palatable.
They have some options to kick some things down the road, some void years, be able to stretch some of that money out if they want to. But right now, the way he's playing, we want him back next year. We want him back. We want him to play. We're fine paying him a handsome amount of money to be the impactful player that he is. So right now I have no concern with that, and I'm excited to have him back. He's shown Ed Oliver's development is a direct correlation to Star Lotulei's presence and the impact that he has on that defensive line. I think that's a big one. I know what position your choice is going to come from Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not sure which of the two it's going to be, but I'll let you surprise me.
So for Defensive Player of the Year, are we going to do MVP too?
Yeah.
For the team?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we'll go through because it's unfair. The MVP of this team is Josh Allen. Like it just is.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's wait. Let's wait because I don't have that. I don't have Josh Allen.
Good. We'll leave that there then. So we'll do Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, MVP.
Okay. Defensive Player of the Year for me is Micah Hyde.
Okay.
I wanted to give it to Taron Johnson because I love Taron Johnson's play, but Micah is playing at an incredible level. He really is. He's doing it all. He's everywhere. He flashes all over the film. He hits. He gets back in cover. Like he is just coming into a absolute prime for himself right now with the Buffalo Bills, and I think he's one of the 3-4 most important players on this team. When a couple weeks ago when we saw him kind of come up limping, I was absolute panic. We cannot lose Micah Hyde. He's one of those type of players for this team. So for me, he's the Defensive Player of the Year, and I think that's going to actually be telling as to where my MVP is going.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know how this domino effect's going to go now. Because my Defensive Player of the Year is Jordan Poyer. He is playing at. I think Bills fans know he's playing really well. I don't think Bills fans know he's playing at a historically elite level. The stat that you shared of the passer rating against allowed by Jordan Poyer is so obscene. Jordan Poyer is allowing a passer rating against of 7.1. 7.1. Like, if you just throw an incomplete pass every single play, you get like a 29 in passer rating. He's allowing a 7.1. It is so far and away the best passer rating against of any defensive player in the NFL that it's obscene. He's, creating the impact plays, sacks, turnovers, forced fumbles, 4 interceptions, just incredibly impactful plays. And obviously I have a feeling where that's going. Where's your mind on Offensive Player of the Year?
Josh Allen. The offense goes as Josh Allen goes. And we've seen that a number of times here, but it's super true this year too. And the regression crowd is like really trying to find ways to show that he's regressing. But and I was a guy that said, hey, Josh Allen's not going to he might not regress, but I don't know that he's going to be able to maintain the type of statistical performance he had. But it's almost identical to the what he was doing a year ago, and it doesn't always feel like it this year. That that last year just felt so magical and like they just couldn't be stopped. But he really is sort of on par, pace for pace, where he was a year ago. And so again, he's not my MVP, but he obviously in consideration. This team goes as Josh Allen goes.
Yeah, and so I picked Offensive Player of the Year Stephon Diggs, and I put that in that. I think people have somehow twisted it into he's having a down year or a bad year. We have shown that defenses have really, really tilted towards him. They've bracketed him a ton more, way less man coverage. I saw a stat today. He is by far and away the best receiver in the NFL in man coverage, and other teams know that, and they know they can't leave him in man. You have to bracket him. You have to have two guys focused on him at all times. And when that's happened, we've seen, Emmanuel Sanders blew up at the beginning of the year and has a ridiculous game. We have 2 Cole Beasley games where he has 10 plus catches, 100 plus yards. You just had the Gabriel Davis game with 100 plus yards.
It's helping Dawson Knox be a vertical threat.
4 straight games with Dawson Knox touchdowns. The reason those things are happening are the gravity of what Stephon Diggs pulls his way. And that, for me, that's why I went Diggs Offensive Player of the Year, and I did go Josh Allen MVP, and that the biggest one for me is the percentage. Josh Allen represents a higher percentage of yards and touchdowns for the Buffalo Bills than any other single player in the NFL represents for their team. He is the engine that makes this team go, the franchise and everything that goes there. But I really respect the choice that you made, because I think you can make the case that the defense is carrying more of the water this year for this team. And if that's the case, the straw that stirs that drink is your MVP.
Yeah, for me, obviously Josh is total consideration for this award, but I wanted to go the different round, go Jordan Poyer here. Mostly because Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde just don't get the respect that they deserve throughout the league. They do within the fan base, but the season Jordan's putting together is just, I talked about Micah and him hitting his prime, and Jordan's right there with him hitting his prime, and the way they're playing together, these two guys really run that defense, and the defense is carrying the water for this team. The days that Josh and the offense haven't shown up, the defense still has shown up, even in that terrible Jacksonville loss. Jacksonville only scored on short drives and turnovers by the offense, and they did everything they could to keep that game within reach for the Bills. So Jordan's playing incredible. I really think there's at least 3, maybe 4 all-pro defensive backs playing right now for the Buffalo Bills, and Jordan Poyer better be a lock the way he's playing this year, and Micah Hyde's right there with him. And I do think, I think this defense is putting up historical type numbers, and you're right. It starts with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And so I had to give Jordan my MVP for the year. I think he's the most important player on that side of the ball right now. You're muted.
A couple more fun stats for Jordan Poyer. Jordan Poyer, in the 8 games that he's played, he is averaging giving up 4.8 yards per game in receiving yards allowed.
Yeah.
Not per play, not per attempt, not per target, per game. Mm-hmm. In 8 games, he's allowed 39 yards in coverage. Yeah. He has 5 games where he's allowed 0. He's been targeted every single game.
Yep.
And he's allowed 0 in 5 of the games. One of the games he allowed negative. It was a screenplay.
Awesome and run support.
All
these. If you want to have fun, if you have PFF and you want to have fun, go look at the Bills defensive backs and just go look through the grades. All Levi isn't, he's in the top 20 in all statistics, but for your cornerback too, to be in the top 20 in all these statistics, Terran's having a great, the stats are fun defensive backs for the Bills right now, but Jordan is such a step above all those other fun stats for the Bills defensive backs. It's really incredible what he's been able to do.
And the one that really sticks out for me for a safety in my mind is not necessarily lockdown coverage, not allowing catches, not allowing anyone to get a catch on you. It's not allowing anyone to break tackles or to, get those yak yards
The
afterwards.
lack of explosive plays. We just showed the explosive play graphic. That's a direct correlation to Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde.
And on the entire season, he's allowed 17 yards of yak. 17 yards of yards after catch. The entire season, and being able to allow that at 2.5
I think
yards of yak per game.
His missed tackles like 3.6%, which is, there's a couple guys at 0%, but there's not many. He's right up there in the top 10 in that too.
They credit him with 3 missed tackles the entire season.
Yeah.
And being able to be that kind of player that how often he's up there in the box, throwing himself around, able to do those things. That's as much as you can ask for. And it's something that it's taken for granted. I think that people realize he's good. I don't think people realize he's as impactful as what he is. So I think that's a really great choice for MB.
I enjoy when people think that I'm smart, so I appreciate that.
So as we kind of bring it back around to this game for the Colts, what is it that you expect in this game? What is your prediction for the game itself?
I'll start. I'm gonna pick the Bills to win the game, but I don't like this game at all, Greg. I really don't. I do think this is the most physical matchup that we've gone against here so far this year, and I don't know. I think the Bills are a good team. I don't know how physical of a team they are. But here, we'll go with the player spotlight. For me, the player spotlight's the guy I got here. It's Tremaine Edmonds in this game. It's whether or not he's going to be healthy in this game. We were talking offline. I think you make a good point in that, in a heavy run game, Klein can come in and be okay. And I like Klein. He's a luxury to have as a backup linebacker. But I need the speed and athleticism that Tremaine Edmonds presents with a Jonathan Taylor, with a Nyheim Hines, especially that passing game. And a lot of the explosive plays are coming from the running backs. And I don't want to see AJ Klein matched up against Jonathan Taylor out in the passing game. I just don't. This is not a matchup I trust. Where I think people are hard on Tremaine Edmonds out on Twitter and in the Bills universe, but the stack of games before he got hurt that he's put together, the month and a half of football that he's been able to put together here over this stretch, he is an ascending player. We're seeing him really develop into the guy that they drafted him to be right before our eyes. And so I'm bummed that he got hurt and had a hiccup in that process. And I hope that he's back this week to continue that process. Cause I do think, we don't know the status of Star and we're not going to speculate on that, but if Star's back, that's going to be huge, but Tremaine's really going to be what, for me, gives the Bills the edge in a matchup like this.
Yeah, and a great point by Dunny in the comments here. Star Lotulelei is not included here because he's separately on the COVID IR. He's not on the injury report.
Correct. He's not even in the building right now.
Yeah, correct. He's not allowed in the facility. So Cole Beasley, just a DNP, got to getting him right. You've seen even Sean McDermott gave away more information than he normally does in the postgame presser when he said, we were just kind of trying to get him through that game. It wasn't an accident that he only played 9 snaps. He was there in case they needed him. They were hoping not to need him in that game. I won't be heartbroken if they go another game here, although...
And the way Gabe Davis played...
He certainly gave that availability. Kenny Moore is also a really good slot corner. So this isn't the game. It's not like when you're going against the Dolphins and the outside corners are great, but the slot's kind of struggling and you really want Cole Beasley to have a big game. Kenny Moore is the best piece in their secondary. You don't want to pick on the slot guy. He's their best corner. This is the game to kind of, hey, don't worry about it. We'll let Sanders play the slot, bring in Davis on the outside. Now we're seeing more with Reggie Gilliam and the 6 offensive linemen and the 2 tight ends. Let's keep leaning into that and see if we can pass out of those sets. 2 linebackers on here makes me nervous. The DNP for Edmonds, the red non-contact for Milano. This game without Star, it's going to come down to the linebackers. We need those guys to be able to play fantastic. I'm more, like you said, more optimistic about Klein in this game. I don't mind him being the downhill thumper. I even, for anything that's there, Tremaine Edmonds gets underrated for how savvy he is in coverage, how well he moves. If there's a bugaboo in his game, he's still learning how to play as fast as what he is in the run game and where to get his body as quickly as possible. That's AJ Klein's, best aspect, is that he knows where to get to. He can't get there as fast as Tremaine Edmonds,
Right.
but he knows where to get to. I don't mind that in a game like this where there's a lot of discipline in playing that duo interior run. You have to know exactly where to look, exactly where to be, and then to fire your gun quickly and to get into that spot. I'm okay with Klein there. You're right. If they get him isolated in space with Taylor or Nyheim Hines, that's a nightmare. I don't want that. But I'm hopeful that Poyer and Hyde can help more there than maybe the benefit Klein gives in the run game. I'm okay if that's the case here as a trade-off. And then later you get me into that Buccaneers game, some of these other games. I want, we need Tremaine if we're going to go on a run here. This is a game where I can survive, in my opinion. In my spotlight is going to be at Oliver. If we don't have Star, Harrison Phillips had some good snaps. He had a nice game. I'm okay with him being in there, but he's not going to win a matchup with Quentin Nelson. Like, he's just not.
Right.
That's not going to have. Star wasn't going to win a matchup. Star, we would hope could be neutral 40% of the time against Quentin Nelson. That's the best you're going to get. Harrison's going to be neutral 10% of the time against Quentin Nelson. What we need is Ed Oliver needs to have a disruptive game that's throwing off the interior movement of their duo game, because he's penetrating, blowing stuff up in the backfield, cutting off gaps, being able to get him in there. I warn you guys, be patient. Once or twice this game, he's going to over-penetrate and is going to open up a running lane that they're going to run through. It's going to happen. We need him to have more disruptive plays than the one or two that he allows, because they're going to play into it. He's going to over-penetrate. Quentin Nelson's going to come around the other side and kick him out, where he's over-penetrated, and open up a big running lane behind him. We need him to have more disruptive plays than the one or two he allows, trying to get overexcited and penetrating. But that's my spotlight, is how they recover in that mix of Harrison Phillips. I won't even say Vernon Butler's name, but maybe Vernon Butler. And Ed Oliver needing to fill in for Star in the way that they have.
Yeah, and maybe some F.A. Obata. I think he flashed a little bit in the interior and some of that versatility. But yeah, I think when you have Ryan Kelly and Quentin Nelson, that no matter who you're lining up in that interior is going to have a long day. But yeah, I agree. If he can get some disruption in there, that's better than,
just cause some chaos. Cause some chaos where it is. What are you predicting from a score standpoint?
Yeah, so I was saying, I don't love this matchup. I don't love the physicality that the Colts present, especially we were just talking that interior offensive line. This terrifies me. Jonathan Taylor terrifies me. I really firmly believe in my heart the Bills had no business winning the playoff game a year ago. And I know Phillip Rivers was a big part of that. He had a really great game against the Bills, but they were still able, again, to run the ball from behind in a playoff game on the road, which is something that terrifies me, a team that has that type of ability. The Bills, if they do have an Achilles heel, even though they've corrected it this year and it hasn't popped up, it has always been this type of strong interior runs, these duo concept type run like this, and especially without, with the potential of having no Star Lotulelei. So that part all scares me. But I do think the Bills just have too much on both sides of the ball in terms of talent and the way they're playing right now. And I don't know that I think Indy has too many flaws for me to go ahead and pick them. But I think it's going to be close. I think Vegas is right. I've got it 27-20. I think it's going to come down to the wire in this game. I think maybe the Bills score late on a final possession to win the game or something like that. I think it's going to be down to the fourth quarter. This is going to be a physical grind out game, good coaching staffs, teams with players on both sides of the ball. But I think the Bills ultimately edge them out. But I don't love playing the Colts right before you have a 4-day turnaround. Like, there's maybe no team I want to play with that type of physicality that then have to go play in 4 days. So this is a tough part of the schedule for me. But I do think the Bills walk away with a win.
I'm right there in the same ballpark. I got a little bit higher. I do think it hits the over. I think the Bills give up a frustrating big score to probably to Taylor, maybe one to Taylor, one to Hines, maybe Hines in a screen game, Taylor in the run game. But ultimately, I don't think the Colts secondary can't keep up with the offense. I think that ultimately the Colts defensive line won't be able to be disruptive enough to stop the Colts secondary from shooting themselves in the foot. I have Bills 31, Colts 24. I think it's going to be right there. It's a 7.5 point spread. Over-unders just over 50. I think that we're going to see that kind of game. And I think that you have it at 47 points. I think it's going to be right in that range, 47 to 55. It's going to be a solid scoring game. I don't think the Bills shut them down the way that we've seen some other games. I think this is the Achilles heel of this defense. And it's also going to be a great test for these Patriots games coming up. In that,
absolutely.
How do you hold up against a team that's really powerful and able to run the ball? We have the best pass defense in the NFL, and we have an okay run defense. And I think our run defense numbers look good.
It leaked out a little bit last week. The Jets didn't really lean into the run game, but if they had any success, it was in the run. And so the Bills really need to tighten that up.
Yeah. I don't think we've played a lot of teams other than the Titans that are prominent run offense. We haven't played the Ravens. We haven't played the Browns. We haven't played the 49ers. Right. Some of the really strong running games, the Cowboys. So we haven't been tested to that standpoint. So our numbers look pretty good. I'm not sure that we have a top 2 or 3 run defense in the NFL. I think we have a fine run defense. We're going to find out Sunday. We are going to find out.
And it's this next month either way,
Yes. So the Saints, the Patriots, the Colts, we are going to find out over this next stretch here. And that's going to be a big piece of it. So let us know in the comments what your predictions are for the game. We're really excited. Aaron, what are some of your final thoughts and what the fans should be excited about going into this weekend?
Yeah, I think that, this is, in my opinion, the meat and potatoes of the schedule here this next month. I think, who we think this team is, they really need to, get through this stretch. And I think they can be competing for that number 1 seed. I think everyone's trying to hand Tennessee the number 1 seed because the strength of schedule. I don't care about strength of schedules or anything like that.
They almost lost to the Jags on Sunday.
Absolutely. The NFL is super weird. If there was ever a year where you could learn, if you didn't already know this is a week-to-week league, you learned it here in 2021. And so the Bills have a month here. It's a little wacky. Like I said, you have the 4-day turnaround going into Thanksgiving, a lot of physical games coming up, and then you get that nice 11-day break. But then the Patriots are playing hot right now. Bills fans don't want to hear it. They don't want to talk about it. They're still trying to act like the Patriots stink. They don't stink. And they are going to,
they're a tough team.
You hit the nail on the head, Greg, where this is actually a good litmus test for what type of game we should expect going into the Patriots, and maybe some of the things that the Bills will have to work on in preparation for that Patriots game. So this is going to be a physical stretch of football. I want to see the Bills come through here healthy and stack some nice wins, because this really is, to me, this is the hardest part of the schedule. The Bills had started a couple weeks ago. Everyone was talking about how easy their strength of schedule is. Well, it's toughened up here over the last month or so. So I'm excited to see. I think we're going to really find out exactly who this team is. We've seen all the DVOAs. We've seen all the stats that show the Bills are one of the better teams in football. But, now you're going to have to prove it over the next month of football. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to see, can they live up to the stats, or are they going to kind of regress here over the next month and be another one of these teams that's just in the mix?
100%. And I think this is exactly the kind of stretch that's going to prove what kind of organization this is, what kind of team this is. Are they able to show, you're talking about here in the next 5 weeks, the next 6 weeks, 6 playoff caliber teams. I don't know that all 6 are absolutely going to be in the playoffs, but there's a chance that this is 6. This is potentially 6 straight playoff teams at home for the Colts, on the road for the Saints, at home for the Patriots, at the Bucks, at home for the Panthers, at the Patriots. Those 6 games, all 6 of those teams as of today would be in the playoffs. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that you need to be able to be prepared for. We're going to be ready. We're going to be excited to be able to do that. We're going to be here for you every Wednesday night for our preview show, every night immediately following the games. Aaron, I have some bad news for you. This is our last 1:00 game for about
a month. This. This is the other thing I hate about this stretch of the schedule. I'm going to be miserable. My routines are going to be all off. I'm going to be just humbugging around my house. But it's Christmas season.
Okay. So maybe I like where your head's at.
Yeah.
So we're excited for you. We're going to be here for you. Obviously, you heard about our new addition with the Air Raid Hour, bringing Steve and Dave over to the network. We're really excited about that. Make sure you're checking out everything that Rob and Kyle have going on with Roundup. There's a new podcast format. Eric and Anthony have taken the film room and turned it into a podcast format.
That Jay Feely interview, guys, get on it. That's tons of gems in there.
Yeah, last night they had Jay Feely on to be able to talk through everything. It was fantastic. Really, really good show. And now that's going to be available in podcast form for you as well. Anthony going with Disguise coverage right before us every Wednesday night. The fantasy show on Thursday night. So much fun and exciting things going on for you. We're going to be here for you all season long. Make sure you're checking out our sponsors, Uncle Jumbo's and the Underdog Fantasy app. Download Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Cover1 to get yourself 10 free dollars. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Thompson. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.